You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Thursday. It is Halloween, listeners. Yes, it is officially spooky season. Hope you're having a good trading week. Market's looking a little spooky. Should be some fun to sink our teeth into there, pun intended. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network. You know the deal, nearly a dozen shows, including the latest edition, the Futures Rundown. You want to get it all. Wherever you're listening to this, make sure you're listening to the full network. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, that doesn't sate you, only one place to go to sate your thirst, your hunger for more options content. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. That'll get you options oddities. After Ball Views tomorrow, get you pro Q&As earlier in the week, live streams, giveaways. Almost time, listeners, almost time to give away the Pro Trading Crate for October. Yes. It's time for our own little version of trick or treat here. Should be a fun time. It should be a fun time on the show today as well. Let's go around the horn and see who's joining us. First, out to the hallowed halls of Cboe East we go, where we are joined once again by the Flowmaster himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from Cboe. Mr. Flowmaster, how are things? How do you celebrate Halloween in Cboe East, sir?
Oh, man. Well, Halloween in New York City is all about the big Greenwich Village parade, which is just ginormous and crazy. And this year, it's like 77 degrees today, so it's going to be a wild night. Now, I actually couldn't come up with much of a costume for for the office today, so I just look like a regular person. But it's beautiful, super nice day in New York, and markets are busy. That's for sure. And there's so much coming up that I think we need to extend to 2 hours today.
2 hour show today. The Flowmaster called it. So no sexy nurse Flowmaster costume this year?
No, I did that one time, and HR called it.
You've retired the sexy nurse. Okay.
Never again.
HR frowned upon that. I see. I understand. All right. Let's go out now to the land of the weather shield known as St. Charles. I was just there a week ago, listeners. Beautiful this time of year, where we are joined once again by Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, how are things? How do you celebrate Halloween and spooky season out there in St. Charles, sir?
Hey, we got trick-or-treating, just like any other town. Ours is very good. The candy is very generous out here. I will say that. It's far more our kids do far better than I ever did as a kid, and they're very generous with candy here.
Is St. Charles the land of the full sizes? That's how you know you're living large and you get full sizes.
There's a lot of full-size candy bars that my kids have gotten through the years, so they're a little bit too old for that now, but through the years, I may have gained a pound or two stealing their candy through the years.
You're never too old for a full size. I don't know. Pick your poison. You want a Snickers, you want a Reese's, you want a Butterfield, whatever floats your boat. King size, anything. Always a good thing. I
Absolutely.
As we keep on rolling out there to mix things up a little bit this week, joining us on the panel. You've heard him on Twifo. You've heard him on the Futures Rundown. You've even heard him on Vol Views, making his first appearance here on the option block. This keeps up. Scott, got to come up with a nickname for you. He is Scott Bauer from Prosper Trading Academy. Scott, welcome to the option block on the day of all things spooky, sir.
I am very happy to be here today, Mark. Thank you for having me.
All right, then. With the team assembled, let's dive right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, listeners, let's get into it. It is a spooky day out there. Everyone's getting ready for all the ghosts, even easy for me to say, the ghouls and the goblins. I'm already excited. I'm already thinking about putting out my spooky stuff a little bit later today, listeners. But I'm not there yet. Time to get spooky on the show first, and things are looking spooky here. On the market today, listeners, S&P off nearly 1.5%, about 1 1/3% right now, selling off a good 80 handles. So that 58.30 we were at not too long ago, about 100 handles below that now, right around 57.30 as we're kicking off the show. So S&P giveth and the S&P taketh away. Today it is taken away with both hands. The NASDAQ saying, hold my bear kid, off 2.25% today, getting spooked by good old Softy and good old Meta, both of whom kind of screwing the pooch out there. And then Dow off about 0.5%. And then not one to be forgotten, our old pal small caps off about 0.8% out there as well. So kind of splitting the difference, more than the Dow, but less than the S&P and the NASDAQ out there. All that red means, of course, some green on the vol screen. If you've been waiting for a north of 20 handle, we kissed it a few times last week. We've been flirting with a 20 handle, it seems like. Today, we blew right through it. Got up as high as 23.42 earlier this morning. As we kicked off the show, we have come in about a point from that, right about 22.40, still up about 3.1 points from where we were on the last show on Monday. So things looking pretty frothy out there. VVIX also reflecting that as well, at a 123, up a whopping 10 points from where we were this time last week. All right, let's go around the horn. Let's go the way we started the show. Let's go out to the hallowed halls of Cboe East first. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what's catching your eye out there in the markets on this very blood red day, sir?
It's definitely a rough day. I mean, we're kind of getting to we can see the finish line in terms of the election, or at least we can see election day. You've also got some really big.
Yeah, I don't know if we can see an
movers.
outcome. Look at the action today, right? It's just spitting in the face of everything. But I digress. Go for it, sir.
That the date is it's gonna come, and yes, we will see how it plays
That's true.
out,
the day will be here eventually. That is true.
That's the only certain point. But I think that you have a lot of last second election stress and kind of, reshuffling of expectations. You've also got some major earnings movers. The market is also, we're still, even though we're off, a little bit over 1% today, almost 2% in the NASDAQ, we're still up 20% year to date. You have a lot of commentary coming out in terms of what to expect. A lot of it looks a little bit bearish after this kind of incredible bull run. So I just think it's funny. I was looking at the dispersion index, which is one of Cboe's indicators that basically shows you kind of how differently stocks are performing. It actually it tends to dispersion goes down when correlation goes up, which is what we saw, earlier, in the month. And then, we really kind of had a pretty solid October, but it's kind of given it all away today. So, we're dipping back down a little bit in terms of dispersion. I did some pretty interesting work on using the daily SPX options to calculate the forward volatility and basically quantify really what the market is expecting on November 6th and 7th and 8th. This is the first election cycle where there's daily options. So, it's really pretty cool because, the data is reliable, and to be able to say, okay, we see the volatilities, we can do the math to figure out the forward vols, and then say, look, the market is pricing in a move of a solid 2+% for the 6th, the day after the election. So we will see.
Yeah, the first cycle with dailies and with these new binaries on the election itself. So a lot of new products in the offing out there this year, which makes it certainly interesting. As we go out to the land of St. Charles, Uncle Mike, unfortunately, you've had a lot of Uncle Mike type of days, so you can't really complain if today, not so much, sir.
Nah, markets are pulling back a little bit, but I think that when we look at the big picture, as per always, the markets are up a heck of a lot, and on the year and in general, and today ultimately will be somewhat of a blip in the radar. We were within striking distance of new all-time highs just a day or two ago. But now we're roughly 100 points away. 150 points away from it, referring to the S&P. So looks like we're going back to support a little bit. And you could argue that we're at support levels right now. But if not, the only thing that I would have to say is that we do have that thing, the the election coming up. So a lot of uncertainty, and I think that just kind of to be expected. The thing that is catching my eye a little bit more so than just a down day in the market, we are having a fairly large sell-off in the precious metals. So keep an eye on that. And then, surprisingly, we're very calm in the bond market. We're relatively flat. So it'll be interesting to see where money shows up either tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, if money shows up again, because money is just getting taken out of stocks. It's getting taken out of precious metals. And I'm going to be curious to see if it does show up where something rallies somewhere next week. And so I think that I am surprised we are having this big of a movement. I would have been equally surprised if we'd have had this big of a movement to the upside. I figured we'd be relatively flat till election day, but that's why they play the game, as the late great Yogi Berra once said.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty crazy. That speaks to how much precious metals have run this year, right? Because they're not really a safe haven to run to right now. People are fleeing stocks and they're fleeing metals at the same time. How often do you see that? And then bonds are doing nothing. You're right. A very strange day out there, listeners. If you want more of all that fun, you have rates, metals, all that fun, stay tuned for TWIFO coming up a little bit after this show. As we go out now, Scott, you've been on TWIFO before, your first appearance here on the old OB show, sir. What's catching your eye out there in a appropriately enough blood red Halloween, sir?
So, and Henry will absolutely, and I'm sure has been following this all day. Even though we're seeing the VIX spot, the near-term VIX really move higher today, and it's hitting right up at its 50-day moving average. Before it came off around 23.5 or so. We're not seeing the VIX futures curve obviously move as significantly. So once we get beyond next week. Now, once we get beyond the next Wednesday, the 6th expiration in VIX contracts, we're seeing VIX futures really just leveled off and up slightly today. So, all this volatility that we're seeing today, whether it's caused from Microsoft and Meta, whether it's caused from election jitters, some of the eco data that came out, the market is telling me that it just wants to get past the election. So we haven't seen a big change in the VIX curve going out. Now, is this a buy the dip moment? I think it is, but you have to obviously, pick your spots, look at the stocks or the indices that you really want to get into. But I'm not afraid of this market at all right now. And as you said at the top of the show, Mark, we love the volatility. We look for volatility like this. So this is really a trader's environment.
All right, let's see what kind of environment we have going out there, listeners. Let's go out to the markets. Are they lighting it up on this so bloody Halloween, listeners? The answer is yes. VIX is lighting it up. VIX loves a blood red day in the S&P. That is just food for the VIX out there, and it is eating well today. Almost 1 million contracts on the tape already. 948 right now. We haven't seen VIX hitting that level in a little while now. The ADV back down to 735. If we keep this up, I got a feeling that ADV going to be rocking. It's been weird watching these volumes heading into the election because, like I said at the top of the show, this is the first electoral cycle where we have 0 days and we have these binaries out there now. So people can, if they want to, express their views on the election right up to the minute of the event itself. So not seeing as much paper in the early days outside of today, really, as we have in days past. So that's been kind of interesting. ADVs have been kind of coming in across the board. Today might give a little bit of a jolt to that again. What's lighting it up out there? You might ask in the VIX today of this 1 million contracts. The big dog, 78,000 of the NOV 18 puts, followed by number 2, 67,000 of the NOV 35 calls. Number 3, 60K of the NOV 16 puts. Number 4, 59,000 of the NOV 17 puts. So all NOV all the time, except for this last one. Number 5, we got 54,000 of the DEES doubles. Looks like we had a DEES 33 double vertical. There is OI though on the doubles though, so maybe potentially they are rolling down. Be an interesting day to roll down in VIX. You don't see that too often out there, but crazier things have happened out there, listeners. SPY looking equally heavy out there. 5.6 million contracts on the tape out there in SPY land today. The ADV 7.12. We might hit that by the end of the show. We might hit that by the start of the odd block at this point. So yeah, that ADV is going to be going back up as well. The S, no slouch as well. 2.15 million. No, let's just do it for fun, listeners. Let's do our old test out in the S. Let's see. Sometimes when the worm is really turning out there, sometimes we get a little bit of non-zero day action percolating into the top 20. And that is not the case at all today, listeners. All anybody wants to play with today are Halloween toys, Halloween playthings. 20 for 20 once again in the SPX, all going the way of the dodo today. So once again, the S looking very, very front day heavy, 2.15 million out there. The ADV 3.03, again, probably going to hit that by the end of the show as well. Small caps, the only one looking kind of appropriate to its range, maybe a little heavy, 900,000. That's respectable for small caps, but we have seen them there at this point of the show earlier. The ADV 1.15 million out there, listeners. And let's go out to the Qs. The Qs obviously taking it on the chin today. 3.12 million on the volume front, so a pretty heavy day. The ADV 3.89 million. Is it going to get there? Yeah, spoiler alert. It's going to get there pretty darn quick out there, listeners. And speaking of hot action, is it a hot action day on the single name front, listeners? Well, the answer is yes, but you know what? Let's just re-rack this. Number 10 was Mara, but things are moving hot and heavy on the bottom half of our top 10 because guess what just kicked it to the curb? By the way, cost you 349,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today, so that is more than respectable. That is flirting with our record, which I think is somewhere around 360. Maybe we kissed 400,000 once, but this is getting pretty darn lofty for a single name volume today. So It's like the market's been waiting for a good little bit of red on the screen, and they are getting it today. Number 10, it's Alphabet Class A. You know them, you love them. Maybe you hate them. The old GOOGLs out there, listeners. They're coming hot off their earnings. One of the few big tech names to actually look all right in their earnings, actually making some money on the AI front, but not enough to stem the blood red tide out there today. 172.10 off about 240 or a little over about 1.5% today. Good for 350,000 contracts. And the number 10 spot, listeners. Number 9, it's the fruit company. Doing more paper than it has done lately. 436, that's a lot for Apple these days. Only gets you to number 9 today. That shows you what a banger day it is today, listeners. 228 even off $2 or about 1% for the fruit company. They are popping off after the bell tonight, so we'll see if they continue this blood red surge or if it's going to be maybe a little bit of a turnaround. Apple, if past his prologue, is usually pretty good at the old bait and switch, though Microsoft used to be pretty good at it as well, and these days, maybe not so much. Number 8, I was just saying, maybe some of the indicators people have been looking at for the outcome of the election, maybe taking a bit of a turn today. If you're looking at all things Trump, taking a whooping out there today. DJT 36.17 off nearly $4 or over 10%. It sold off to as low as 33.41 before rebounding a little bit out there. You know, there's been some crazy activity out there in DJT and in the binaries surrounding Trump over the last, let's say, couple of weeks. It does have me scratching my head a little bit about what exactly is afoot out there, because what we're seeing in these, and obviously DJT does its own thing anyway, but the binaries are certainly seem to be unrelated to what's going on the polling front. So kind of interesting. Makes me wonder if there's a little bit of skullduggery afoot. But hey, you know, that's going to be good fodder for our election night special. Stay tuned. Coming up next Tuesday, listeners. But yeah, stay tuned for our election night special next Tuesday, listeners, for all that fun and a whole bunch more. Bunch of special guests will be joining me. Should be a good time. If you checked out some of ours in the past, 2016, 2020, you know, they've been a good time. Looking forward to more of that. We'll see if Uncle Mike finally pays his now, 8-year-old debt to Dan on for $1 with plus interest. He's owed him since, I think, the 2016 election night special. So it's been a while out there. But DJT doing 456,000 contracts today. And the number 8 spot. Number 7 is the Amazonians, 466. Taking on the chin today as well. One of the names dragging the Dow down and everything else. 156.75 off $6 exactly, or a little over 3%. Again, good for number 7 out there. You know, if an AM tech name is your bag, number 6 right behind it, 516 is AMD, 144.88 off 3.75 or 2.5%. Again, good for the number 6 spot. 516,000 contracts. The artist formerly known as Facebook, looking like the artist formerly known as a little bit of a dud today. Earnings no bueno. They've been managing to really blow out the doors in earnings of late. This cycle, not so much. 568.5 off 23.25 or nearly 4% today. Let's see, how low did they get? 565.92. So they have rebounded a little bit off the lows. Looks like they're going to start testing them again pretty soon. Meta, number 5, 535. Number 4, keeping it in M-Tech names. I was just talking about them. This name used to be the master of the bait and switch. Apparently, no more. 409.14 off about $23.5 or about 5.5%. A softy taking it on the chin. They got down to as low as 406.30. It's like they've rebounded a little bit, but they're also starting to turn back down a little bit again as well. 656 on the tape for them, number 4 today. Number 3, this name, my goodness, SMCI. 893 on the tape. The worm has really turned for this one. Off 28.88, off 420, or about almost 13% today. They had a great year. They're still, after all this, they are still up on the year, listeners. They're up $0.33. But they were at $28.50 about a year ago, 2055. They got all the way up to $122.90, and then since then they have just come for it, including recently dropping just in the last few sessions from $49 down to where they are right now. Now there's news about accounting issues maybe with this. When that happens, look out below on the stock. Accounting issues is the one thing the street cannot abide. So yeah, that's usually not a good sign, and the stock reflecting that, but still managing to be up on the year. I got a feeling by the end of the day that won't be the case. Number 2, it's Tesla, 253.25 off 4.25 or 1 2/3%. Good for 1.14 million. And you know what the big dog is today, listeners. It's NVIDIA, kind of reasserting its dominance in the options market today. 3.25 million contracts. So right back where we expect it to be at the top of the roost, north of 3 million contracts. 133.5. So giving back about 5.75 or a little over 4%. Let's see, they got as low as 132.30. So they've bounced about $1.25 from there. It looks like they're kind of turning back down a little bit as well. So maybe they'll retest those lows. We shall see. Either way, good for 3.25. This week, a hot week on the earnings front. We had Ford on Monday. I said it was a dumpster fire, and it is a dumpster fire. Good thing what Ford I overwrote aggressively calls against it, listeners, and that worked out all right. Let's see. SoFi on Tuesday, we had Pfizer, JetBlue, and Chipotle, and Alphabet. Wednesday, of course, we had Lilly and good old Softy and Meta. Coinbase and Robinhood. And Carvana. Carvana up 800% over the last, I think, year and change, maybe 2 years. Either way, we were just joking about it on Oddities not that long ago. It was being banned here in Illinois. The stock was circling the drain. Talk about a resuscitation out there for just a name like Carvana. I mean, it was circling the drain and now looking pretty good. Let's see really quickly. Where is Carvana trading right now? 257.64. It was in single digits not that long ago, listeners. We also have Peloton today, lighting it up, Uber and others. Let's get to some of the earnings front because we do have some intriguing stuff on the earnings front. Stay tuned to the website for the updated earnings move result, and earnings season reports out there. Let's just look at some names that are popping off after the bell today so we can get a good sense for what's coming up here. Where are we? Let's go to Apple, if we can get all the way out there. There we go. All right, Apple after the bell today. Amazon after the bell today as well. Apple, when we ran this report, was 231.41. Obviously, they've moved a little bit since then. They're pricing in 776. In the past, they've moved about 8.25. So about half a buck less vol in Apple. Is that merited? I don't know. They had a big move after that. Obviously, that stock buyback, then it's kind of been mostly drifting upwards ever since. So maybe you could argue a little bit off the top, but still pretty juicy. Amazonians, 187.83 when we ran this report, also today after the bell. 11.41 is what they were pricing in on their earnings straddle. In the past, they've moved 14.61. So, wow, that's a 320 off the top there in Amazon. Wow, you like that, listeners? Are you down for a little bit of discount in Amazon? They've moved already a good chunk just today, so interesting. And then Intel today after the bell as well. 22.68 when we ran this report. They were pricing in 205. In the past, they moved about 2.25. So giving about a 20-cent haircut out there. So it looks like a lot of folks taking vol off the top there, which is kind of interesting. You know, the last few seasons, we've seen nothing but outperformance. I mean, is that finally starting to come to an end? You can't outperform forever, can you, listeners? So maybe this is the cycle where the worm turns out there. We had Uber today before the bell. Let's pull them up really quickly. Let's see. When we ran this report, they were at 77.62. They were pricing in 5.25. In the past, they've moved 5.75, so half a buck discount there. And they've already sold off $9 or 11.33%. So Uber blowing the doors off their straddle in the wrong direction as well. So they are outperforming. Everyone else is pricing in less juice. Is that the way to go, listeners? I guess we shall find out. The season right now, if you thought last cycle, 114, our long-term average, was pretty juicy, we're hanging out right now 129%. Now, that's only with 215 names reporting. We have a long way to go. But still, that's a lot of juice, listeners. Is that sustainable? If you're looking at these reports, the answer would probably be no at what they're pricing in. But looking at the performance, the answer would be yes. So it's kind of a weird mixed bag out there, listeners. But you know what's never weird? It's always mixed, and it's always fun. It's the Odd Block. So let's get to it.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get down to business. It's the Thursday episode. Some might say the spookiest episode of the week. Is because we unleash the Flowmaster and see what his dark, twisted mind can uncover for us this week. This week, usually he's got some, weird esoteric name that nobody's ever heard of that's lighting up the paper and lighting up the tape today. This week, not so much. He's got some familiar names, like let's kick it off in a name we were just talking about, Alphabet Class A, listeners. You know the ticker, GOOGL, 172 even, off $2.50 right now, 1.5%. On the year, you probably know the tale for GOOGL. It's been pretty good, a little bit less good now, but still up, if you go back for a full calendar year, up about 48 handles or 38%. Year to date, it is up 24%. So either way you want to cut it, still a pretty darn good year out there, but they are giving a little bit back out there today. Mr. Flowmaster, though, sounds like somebody had maybe some well-timed downside going on out there. What caught your eye, sir?
Well, yeah. So these actually showed up at the first 5 lines of our trade of the day recap, which I know you receive, and it shows basically the P&L on opening directional sweeps. So I was not really watching Google closely yesterday, but I think it traded higher after earnings. Looks like somebody came in and bought almost 8,000 of the November 1st, so these expire tomorrow, 180 puts, and they also bought about a similar amount, a little bit less, of the Nov 178 puts. On the 180s, they paid $2 to $2.10, and on the 178s, they paid $120 to $150. When we always talk about the post-earnings vol crush, this could have been somebody really just kind of attracted by that, but they did really, really well because the stock did not stay up for long, finished down almost $5 from there. And just looking at, altogether, it's almost $3 million in P&L on these trades. They all opened. It looks to me like they're actually still open, and Google's down a little bit more today. It's not one of the big movers today, but it's down another 50 cents or so. $2.50. They're up even more, maybe another couple $100,000. So just, I don't know if it was somebody who, was looking to kind of get short and they just got lucky on the post earnings bounce. But this is a heck of a trade. And, using these ultra short dated weeklies, when you're right, it is incredibly capital efficient.
Yeah, they struck gold on these, and they were not afraid to dive into the fire. $2 for a 1 day to go option, pretty much. They weren't messing around. You might think they knew something, but who knows? The earnings were actually good. So what did they know? Right? It just got caught up in the pure malaise, the pure dread, the blood red dread, some might say, that is affecting this Halloween market. Scott, I know you're looking at a lot of large caps over there in Prosper Land. Is Alphabet coming across your tape? And what are your thoughts on somebody really swinging for the fences, 210, and knocking it out of the park with 1 day puts effectively in Google?
So what I was saying is, yeah, that's a pretty gutsy call, those 1 day puts. Full disclosure here at Prosper, we had some very long positions on going into the print with some upside calendar call spreads that we took off yesterday on the move. So we were looking for a big move higher. We got out, flat it. But that person who bought all these puts looking for the downside here, my guess is they were probably bearish on Meta and or Microsoft and were playing that move because of those two stocks, had bullish prints yesterday on their reports. We're probably looking at Alphabet being up today. But that was a pretty gutsy call. There's no question about it.
Yeah, they were diving into the fire, and they got paid. Listen, not very often we see people shelling out that much for very, very near-dated single-name options and really crushing it, especially on the put side. But crushing it out there today. Speaking of crushing things, Henry, our next name is a name, as I mentioned, kind of getting crushed out there today. Vol also getting crushed, but also has been on just a meteoric rise. I was just talking about this name a week ago when you had our question of the week. We said, what would you folks want to buy in terms of straddles going into the election? And one of them was the DJT. I believe it was the 31 strike straddle expiring next Wednesday or next week, I believe, next Friday, I believe. And it was somewhere around $17.80, I believe. And it seemed a ridiculous premium. It was well more than 50% of the value of the stock. And then lo and behold, the thing rallies to pretty much 50. and then right back down to 36. So that straddle has already more than paid for itself. It was cheap, you could argue. So yeah, things are wild out there in DJT, but just about every stretch of the imagination is getting halted multiple times. Just crazy town out there. What's catching your eye in the madness that is DJT, sir?
Well, so another full disclosure here. We actually sold premium yesterday. Okay, we sold a big iron condor yesterday. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking this is a binary event, right? Depending on what happens to the election, stocks either going, maybe back to 10 or lower. Excuse me, maybe even on the upside. Who knows where? We're taking advantage of this incredibly insane implied volatility. We're trading around it a little bit here, but we've got an iron condor. We do limit our exposure because we are, even though we're short both a call and a put, we're also long a call and a put. So we're short a call spread, short a put spread. What I see here is just it's kind of like the betting markets, as you alluded to earlier, right? This is really a proxy on the election here. It's a company that has no revenue, a company that doesn't make money. If it weren't for the election, in my opinion, we're probably trading back sub 20, sub 15 maybe. But it is really, really, volatile, and there is a lot going on. If you're a trader, so far today, Mark, what we're seeing is about 450,000 options traded, about 1.5 to 1 call put. So it's still biased on the call side. I don't think this volatility is going to let up prior to the election, but watch next Wednesday because unless this thing, obviously the election is protracted out, which I don't think any of us wish for, this thing is going to make a binary move. One way or the other, this thing is going to make a huge binary move.
It does have the whiff of 0 or 100 about it. Yes, it does. Very binary in that sense. Mr. Flowmaster, I know you've been crunching a lot of data on DJT here as well. What's been catching your eye, sir?
Well, yeah, this one I got a few phone calls from reporters, and I absolutely agree with Scott. The volatility is kind of the story. Well, the story is also the fact that it's this weird combination of a meme stock and a political proxy, even though that doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. And then, yes, you have the election betting, which has been legalized. I actually, just as a kind of experiment to get comfortable with it, I actually made a small bet on the election market at IB. I think they're called Forecast X is the name of their exchange. So I'm actually long. I'm not going to tell you who because I don't want to start some controversy.
I was going to say, don't tell us who you bid on. That's good.
I'm not disclosing that. What happens at the ballot box stays in the ballot box. But it's really pretty interesting. It's also just getting comfortable with how things are denominated, right? Like, is there what are you actually betting? Is it do you bet $1 to win odds like a football game, or on IB it's quoted in kind of what you spend to gain to be worth $1. So and it's moved. I mean, I believe it got as low as 38.62 Trump over. It's certainly bounced back. It's around 43 now for Harris. So, but there's all sorts of interesting discussion about like who's really betting and what does this really represent. On DJT as a ticker, we saw this stock go from 16 to 50 in about 3 weeks, and then yesterday it was down $10, and now it's down another $4. Intellectually, most people know it doesn't have a profitable business. Therefore, in kind of the traditional thinking, the stock's not worth anything, but it's a proxy for Trump. So there are buyers. And what's interesting is, so as the stock ran up, the vol went from 185 to almost 400%. So that's your kind of classic meme, stock up, vol to extreme levels. And I love the fact that, that Scott, and his group, basically said, okay, this is an opportunity to do it, with some sort of kind of, comfort level in terms of risk control. And then as the stock came back down $10 yesterday, vol was lower. And so this is where things get really, really weird, right? Because if, usually, if you're long a put and the stock goes down, you're going to make money. But if you're long a put and the vol goes down a significant amount, that cancels out the fact that you're making some money from delta. And so if you look at the November 25 puts, basically they haven't made any money for anybody even since the stock was at 50 and is now at $36. So we saw this in GameStop to kind of an even more extreme level. The trade that actually did pretty well for people was selling puts when the stock was at a crazy level, because when the stock came back down, the puts basically still melted away just because the vol went away. So I'm not picking any specific stocks, specific trades. There were actually, going into this big run up, there were a couple of 5,000 lot call spreads. I think the 3540 was the one that I saw that was bought last week around 50 cents. They cleaned up on that, and I'm pretty sure they were able to kind of monetize it, whether they exited or just hedged it. So this is not all retail. It's a lot of retail, obviously, people playing it, for many, many reasons. But it's a wild one, and so with stock back down around 35. It will be really interesting to see what happens with this name next week. I don't know if it basically immediately goes to, 100 or goes to 10. I just think it's going to be incredibly whippy and volatile, which is going to present opportunities for people that know what they're doing, that are kind of planning. Okay, this is my idea. I'm gonna implement it this way using options. It'll be a fun ride, that's for sure.
It's a wild one. You're right. When you could buy those puts and be so right on direction and still get crushed on vol, things are pretty wild. By the way, I'm looking right now, Mr. Flowmaster, and you're right. There has been such wild swings in these binaries. I'm looking at the forecast EX right now. I'm looking at the Harris market. She dipped all the way to 36% earlier this week and now has rallied since to about 44%. So a big swing for her. She got all the way as high as almost 59% back in October 6th. Some weird inflection happened around the 8th to the 10th there in these markets, which is kind of interesting. Something we will, I think, explore a bit on the election night special next week. But Mr. Flowmaster, those binaries you traded on Forecast EX around the election, guess when they pay out? Guess when they actually settle?
I should know because I put some money to work, but I have no idea.
Yeah, January 7th. How savvy is Petterfee? He's not messing around.
Oh, a little carry there, huh?
Look at that, huh? He's not a little history coming to play there. I'm not messing around with January 6th nonsense. January 7th is when those binaries you're trading on the election, when they will actually pay out. So if you're looking for a pile of cash on Wednesday morning, you might want to look elsewhere, listeners. I thought that was an interesting. That's the most Thomas thing I could think of. He's a clever fellow out there. He's not getting caught up in any shenanigans on January 6th. Speaking of shenanigans, let's see what other shenanigans the Flowmaster has in store for us out here this week. He always comes armed with, I think we can call it a weirdo, an oddball pick, and that would be Root Inc., ticker symbol Root, ROOT. This, oh my goodness, $81 even, up $40.51. Or 100% today. Holy crap, I think is the technical term for that. By the way, this is a car insurance name, Root Insurance, if you're not familiar with their listeners. I can tell you what it's been doing the rest of the year, but who cares? It's up 100%. Oh, it's up 788% this year. From Halloween of last year, listeners, it was $9.04. It is now $80.04. So, man, the worm has turned here in Root Insurance. By the way, this is not the first time it has gotten to this level. It got to 83 in April, then they crushed it to 42, then back up to about 81 in July. So it has kissed this level twice before and given a good chunk of it up. So, wow. So I think the technical term is, holy crap, Mr. Flowmaster. What do you got for us?
Well, it was even higher earlier. I think it touched 120.
Oh yeah, 118, 118.15. My goodness.
Yeah, at that point it was up like 130%. So, this is one of these new era insurance names. Lemonade is another one, which also had earnings. They weren't quite as stellar as Root, but it's supposed to be kind of the future of insurance. I think Root is specifically auto insurance and Lemonade is like pet insurance. But the trade I'm looking at on this is really Root is not a very active name. But yesterday into earnings, it does look like somebody bought about 300 of the November 50 calls. So I mean, you got to think about it. That there was a pretty decent expected earnings move. Let me just see what it was, because stock closed around 42. Market was expecting a 22% move in Root. So these were November's. So there were 2-week calls, but paying $2 for calls that were $10 out of the money was a pretty solid, pretty solid confidence trade. There's no weeklies on this name either, so they couldn't trade the November 1st. So anyway, these $2.20 calls that were bought about 300 times, they're trading at $37 today, or at least last I looked. That's about $1 million, and the outlay for this position was only about $67,000. So just a well-timed trade into earnings. I would expect it was somebody that has really watched this name for a long time. This is the first quarter that they actually made money, I believe. So just another impressive mover. I mean, today's one of those days where you got double-digit moves in hundreds of stocks.
Yeah, this one is impressive by just about any measure. You don't have to do much out there. Buy some calls when it's up 100% and then sell them. That's the key. I don't know, Scott, is this one on your radar? Root, this thing, talk about a wild name, sir.
It actually was not. Obviously, with the move today, things kind of flashed up as we saw that move. But no, it 100% had not been on my radar because there's not a lot of option volume, not a lot of open interest in that. So I'm really looking at, for myself and my students, stocks that trade options that have big enough volume where the markets are tightened up a bit. So this one was not a candidate, but boy, what a move today. But you know what, Mark, if you don't mind me popping in here about this, going back to VIX today. Sure. On a normal day, just an average normal day, regardless of volume, we typically see about 2.5 to 1 call to put. Okay, we always talk about put call ratio. VIX, it's the opposite. It's usually about 2.5 to 1 or so. Today, even with the VIX pop, there's more put options that have traded than call options. So personally, to me, I think a lot of people are playing that they're fading the VIX, thinking that it's going to be lower, buying puts. But that's just me talking about that. And I want to bring that up because I thought that put call or call put ratio is pretty dynamic today.
Yeah, you're right. We don't see that too often out there. VIX is a very call heavy instrument by design, listeners. That's what people come into the dance for. We talk about that all the time on vol views in our top 10. It's almost always heavily biased, if not entirely calls. These days, it has been put skewed or 50-50 some days, so that shows you how much the puts are sneaking in there. I have to go look at today's paper again today to see exactly how it's shaping up right now, listeners. Yeah, we've got 572,000 puts on the tape today and 487,000 calls, thanks to the magic of the Flowmaster machine. See how I can call that up so quickly, listeners? Cboe.com/RMA to begin your journey down that road. As we begin our journey, let's do a real quick, because it's Halloween, a real quick spooky mail call.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Mail Block, the portion of the show where you folks take the reins, your questions, your comments, and, of course, your votes in our polls. We got some suitably spooky ones this week, and one just kind of fun head-scratcher. Uncle Mike, we will start with you, sir. First off, our actual question of the week is, we have one more full trading week. We post this on Monday, obviously, listeners, so things getting a little bit closer to home now. Anything can still happen this week, which raises the question, where will VIX Cash close tomorrow on Friday? Now, we gave you 3 ranges, 18 to 21, below 18, 21 to 24, or higher, north of 24. And Uncle Mike, because it's the spooky season, we also, I should say, threw in a fun little spooky flash poll. Which option strategy scares you the most? Naked short straddles, naked short calls, naked short puts, or other? We've got some fun and or silly others. Mr. Uncle Mike, where's VIX closing tomorrow? And which of those strategies scares you the most, or do you have an alternate suggestion?
Yeah, I guess I get spooked out. Andrew's spooking me out somehow. It's normally his job. But anyway, I think we're going to get some buyers tomorrow in the market. I think that a 90-point drop in the S&P in this market environment, I think it's too spooky for the spookiness. And I think we will get some buyers. So with that, I think we'll have the VIX calm down a little bit. So I will say the VIX will close tomorrow. I will say 2107 will be the closing VIX tomorrow at the end of the day. And the strategy that scares me the most, the strategy that always scares me the most, is a naked short straddle.
A good choice. Scott, same questions for you, sir. Where do you think VIX is going to close tomorrow? You only have to do it for one day out, not quite as hard as on Monday. And then which of those three strategies spooks you the most? Or maybe you have an alternate suggestion: short straddles, short calls, or short puts, or other, sir.
I am definitely in agreement with VIX being lower. I don't know that it's going to be quite that low, but I'll go 21.5, just a tad higher than what you just heard. And definitely a short, a naked short. Now, the naked put doesn't scare me as much as a naked straddle, naked strangle, or naked call, because with a naked put, you know your risk, right? Stock goes down to zero, that's your risk. When you add in that call side, you theoretically do have unlimited risk. So to me, anything that involves a naked short call, to me, spooky, and I stay away from it.
All right, the last word is to the Flowmaster. Let's hope he hasn't been spooked as well into leaving his mute button on. We shall see. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, which of these three strategies, short straddle, short calls, or short puts, scares you the most, or other? And then B, what are you feeling for VIX closing tomorrow, sir, heading into the final weekend before the big day next week?
So I thought we called naked sales cash secured nowadays, at least on the put side.
On the put side, we do.
Gotcha. I think uncovered call sales, there are takeovers. There are things like Root that go up 130%. And for the amount of premium you collect selling a naked call, sometimes that's just a terrible trade. It can be tempting, but that's certainly the scariest to me. And VIX tomorrow, I think we get back under 22, maybe just under 22. Mike is right. This is a bigger move than was priced in. We've had some really quiet days, and actually the blog post that I have going up at Cboe Insights, which shows the forward volatility, you can see, that some of the forward volatility days, even Monday is barely pricing in around 10 or 11% volatility for that day. So, I think this move is going to kind of get people a little bit nervous, but at the same time, I think, the VIX is, it's a 30-day measure, right? So we're not talking about next week options. We're talking about options, in later November. So I think vol's going to kind of calm down, but I do think we're going to have some interesting. It'll be a little bit of a roller coaster next week, I think. And again, buying opportunities for people that really kind of know what their plan is, and that would be the point I would stress is think about, if you have discretionary capital that you want to put into the market, then be ready. Maybe we get a nice little dip. I mean, when Trump was elected in 2020, we sold off almost 1% briefly, and then we popped almost 2%. So. I think people are bracing for. We can see the data shows people are bracing for a move of about that magnitude. So and a lot of people are kind of sitting and waiting. So there'll be some things to do, for people that aren't kind of already overextended.
All right, let's see what our audience thinks about all of these. First off, where do you think VIX is going to close tomorrow? Around the range it was on Monday, 18 to 21, still winning 35.4%. Obviously, maybe some legacy voting in there. 25% for north of 24. So we could certainly kiss that. We were threatening it, or not too long ago. 22.9%, so in the range of 21 to 24, which is pretty much where we're hanging out right now. And below 18, 16.7%. And then what spooks you the most, listeners, on the options front, it's actually naked short puts, 36.7%. I'm with Scott. I think they're scary, but they can be at least. But also, you know what the ultimate risk is for those. You don't know that for short straddles or short calls. So I find those infinitely more terrifying. But apparently you folks don't. 30% for naked short calls. 20% only for short straddle. That one has plummeted. That was around 30% a few days ago. Now it's dropped 20%. And then 13.3% for other. And we've had all kinds of silly others. Time spreads people are writing in for, which it makes sense. That could be scary. That could be a good one to add. And then Vernon Griffin writing in, he's scared of naked short people. I like that one. Brings a smile to my face out there. So there you go. We all have the things that we're scared of on this spooky season. As we keep on rolling into our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, as we're coming into our final segment here, it looks like the sell-off is intensifying a bit. Usually at this point of the show, maybe we can tell you things are mitigating a little bit, but not the case. Dow off about 0.2%, and S&P off 1 2/3% now. NASDAQ closing in on off 2 2/3%, and VIX still hanging out a little bit north of where it was before. We were at 22.40 kick off the show, right around 22 3/4 right now. So intriguing stuff. Scott, we will start with you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on through the weekend and into the election next week, sir?
Yeah, and any of the crypto-related stocks like a Mara, I think on this sell-off today, I think those are going to pop back regardless who wins. I think there was too much made of one side being, really beneficial to Bitcoin, to crypto. So I'm looking for Mara specifically for a bounce. Also, I think you got to take advantage of gold today, whether you trade in the future side or you trade in the option side. Specifically, I look at GLD here. I think with this, little pullback today, and it's not major, but it's almost 2%. If you look at how this has performed over the last, 6-9 months or so, this has been a spot on a 2% pullback where you want to take advantage of it. So that's what I'm looking at.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until our next episode on Monday, sir?
Well, I definitely want to see what's happening in the precious metal realm, in that how are we going to react to this? And I hope it does. I hope this 2% pullback does help us as the precious metal bull with which I am. So watching that, and also watching bonds. I think that's an area that we need to keep an eye on. Just the fact that they are peculiarly quiet today makes me scratch my head.
And Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until your next appearance on the show next Thursday, sir?
I'll be in Chicago then, so I'll try to hook up with you. Maybe we can do it in person. We had Amazon and Apple earnings tonight, and then we got an election. So I think we have a lot to keep an eye on, and and just kind of watching the volatility dynamics, from VIX, from the VIX 1D. Just kind of the entire, volatility ecosystem. There's a lot of information out there, so that's what I'm going to be studying. Also, I did this what to expect for the election blog post will go up today, I think. So Cboe.com/insights and look around for it.
Unfortunately, listeners, that music means that's all the looking we're going to be doing here, at least on the TWIFO program. If you want more in your lives, if you're intrigued by what Uncle Mike was laying down there, on all things metals or Scott, and energy and rates and everything. Stay tuned for TWIFO coming up in a little bit. That should be a fun one as well. But before we go, Mr. Flowmaster, you just mentioned the Cboe Insights blog. Folks can, of course, check that out. If they want to check out all the cool goodies you and the team are working on over there, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Just head to Cboe.com/RMA, which is for risk and market analytics, and request a trial. We'll be happy to show you all the magic.
Ooh, show you the magic. I like it. Check out the magic for yourselves, listeners. Cboe.com/RMA, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. While you're surfing around online, Uncle Mike, where should they go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness in their lives?
Go to stcharleswealth.com if you'd like to book an appointment and have a phone call with myself. I always enjoy talking to our listeners. If you're looking for a financial advisor who works in the options space, come check it out. And follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw. I try to put out a lot of content.
Quite the content machine over there. And last but not least, Scott, if folks want to check in and ask you questions about all the things we were talking about today and a whole bunch more, where should they go? What should they do?
prospertrading.com. You can find me there. You can find me all over social media. Happy to speak with anyone about what's going on in the markets.
There we go, listeners. That is going to do it for us on the old OB today. Back again in a little bit for This Week in Futures Options. Then back again tomorrow, of course, for volatility views. And then for you pro folks, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Back one final time for the week for a little bit of options oddities. And we're back again on Monday for the old OB. Have a great Halloween. Stay safe out there. We'll see you back on Monday, another episode of The Option Block.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.